This is Success Stories, a program of the Sorrell College of Business that highlights the lives and careers of people who have accomplished great things. I'm your host, Alan Mendenhall, Associate Dean of the Sorrell College of Business and Executive Director of the Manuel H. Johnson Center for Political Economy. My guest today is Senator Jeff Sessions. Senator Sessions, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alan. Good to be with you.
I almost don't know what to say. Do I say General Sessions? Do I say Senator Sessions?
You get it right. Well, people in Alabama knew me mostly as senator, but I did have 2 years as Attorney General of the United States and 2 in Alabama.
Well, you've got an incredible resume. I mean, after you graduated from the University of Alabama School of Law in 1973, you served in the U.S. Army Reserve, achieving the rank of captain. You served as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Alabama. You served as the 44th Attorney General of Alabama. You served as United States Senator from Alabama from 1997 to 2017. You were elected to the Senate in 1996, re-elected in 2002, 2008, and 2014, and you were the 84th United States Attorney General. In that long and storied career, what accomplishments are you most proud of?
It's hard to say. I try not to think too much about that, really. A lot of people say, this is going to be your legacy. My honest view was that it was my duty to go to work every day to advance the interests of the United States of America and the people of Alabama. And so you make hundreds and hundreds and thousands of decisions, and I think it's a mistake for somebody to say, well, I'm going to serve 6 years in the Senate and I'm going to pass one bill, and I'm just going to. I really think it's so hard to predict what can happen in Congress. Now, you have goals. I had real goals. I really enjoyed my 12 years as United States Attorney under Ronald Reagan and Bush. Reagan appointed me, and we felt like we really made a difference on crime. We had to fix the office of United States Alabama Attorney General. It was in a financial catastrophe. I had to fire the first day a third of the office, reorganize it completely, and then shortly thereafter, Heflin announced his retirement within months, and so I decided to make that race. But so that was a challenge, but it was very rewarding. And then we were able to turn the office over to Bill Pryor, who served elected twice, and now the Chief Judge of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. He was on the short list for the U.S. Supreme Court. Great lawyer. And then Richard Allen, who was a Chief Deputy, and Christy DuBose, she was criminal director, and she's now a federal judge. So it was fun what we did, and I think we laid a foundation there that I'm very proud of. Steve Marshall and his team are great, and they say they're building on the foundation that Bill Pryor and I laid. In the Senate, I was on Armed Services and Judiciary for 20 years. I think in both places we tried to adhere to sound principles throughout. We were able to strengthen Alabama's military presence rather significantly. I mean, Fort Rucker was in doubt, and we were able to confirm its permanent status. We were able to do here at Maxwell, and all that was under some danger. Then Huntsville became big. We were able to save the Anniston Army Depot that was also on a chopping block. And they all became enduring centers of military. So that was a big thing in my time. And a lot of space and defense stuff happened at Huntsville that was important. And then as Attorney General, I knew pretty much what I wanted to do. I'd been Alabama Attorney General, but I'd been 12 years in the Department of Justice as United States Attorney on the front lines, prosecuting cases personally. I knew what the office needed to do, and unfortunately, the president wasn't happy over one matter that I ended up there 20 months. But we traveled 40 states. We tried to rally the police under the period of blaming the police, defund the police, or the attacks on police that were just idiotic. And I would tell them, we have your backs. This Department of Justice knows the importance of your work. We want you to be successful, and we're going to help you, not make your life more difficult. And so, but at the same time, there was a message out there among the left that policing was bad, they should cut their budgets, crime was not a problem. But I could predict, I saw that we were going to have a surge in violence, and we have, and it was unnecessary. Crime is not just rise or tides come in and tides fall, and you don't have anything to do about it. Like New York, under Rudy Giuliani, he was in the Department of Justice when I was, and I knew him. He and Bratton, the chief of police, commissioner of police in New York, they took homicides from 3,000 that were threatening the very viability of New York City. It hit under 300 5 or 6 years ago. Good policing, effective policing, smart, advanced policing techniques can make a community safer. A city like Birmingham, Montgomery, Mobile. You cannot allow crime to reach a level that it threatens the very viability of a city, that people don't want to live there anymore. You've got to maintain public safety. We know how to do it, but you do have to support police, and some people are going to have to go to jail.
How did growing up in Alabama shape your personal and political beliefs?
Well, my daddy had a little country store. He had a grist mill. It was about 1/8 of a mile from our house. I could walk down there anytime I wanted to. And you knew everybody in the community. My parents could have gone to college, but both of them came up during the Depression. My mother had a year at Troy.
Oh, wow.
And she had to come home when the Depression hit because her father had invested in the local bank that went belly up. She didn't have any money. She had to borrow money from her brother to be able to go from Troy back home in Choctaw County. And so I grew up in an area that was rural, and people didn't have a lot of money, and they were frugal about how they managed their money. So I think that was important. The little school we attended, Governor Ivey was a couple of years ahead of me in Camden. Joe Bonner, former congressman, now president of University of South Alabama, he grew up in Camden. His sister, maybe the best of the group, Judy, became president of the University of Alabama. She was in my class, 1st through 12. We had an Annapolis graduate in our class. So I guess I say that to say I don't think it hurts growing up in the country. I don't think it was good for me.
Probably character building.
I think, I'm not sure what, but I won't speculate. But I will just say, growing up in the country, small towns, there were 30 in my senior class. I think that was a wonderful experience, and I cherish this idyllic, really, childhood.
Well, earlier we spoke about, off camera, about how Champ Lyons one time had written a letter to you saying people are calling you a populist, and you sort of embrace the label. And I actually think popular sovereignty is a notion that's central to American experience. It's one of the key parts of the Declaration of Independence, the notion of popular sovereignty, the notion of equality. Those are both central to the Declaration of Independence. And I think populism is very much a part of the American tradition. I don't know that populism is necessarily a negative thing, and I also don't know that it's necessarily a conservative thing. I know there's left populism and right populism. Populism is essentially, recognizing what the people's will is and representing their interests.
Yeah, Justice Lyons said that I see they're calling you a populist sessions, and populism has gotten a bad name, but there's nothing wrong with honest populism. Mm-hmm. And so what that to me meant was, and what was in my heart was, I remembered all those people that I grew up with who didn't have any money. A lot of them didn't have any money. And so they worked hard, they tried to do right, they followed the law, they raised their children well. And if a system gets to the point where the system is not distributing, allowing wealth to be sufficiently distributed, or the system is carrying out social agendas that the majority of the people don't agree with, average good people, ESG, or DEIs and all of those things. So those things, when you defend the interests and rights of good and decent people, then I think you're doing the right thing. But I got to say, I was a good Republican, the free market Republican, still am. But I do think that the world is different, and these huge corporations with their huge law firms, this is not free markets. They've got monumental law firms, brilliant lawyers studying the cracks and crevices and opportunities to take advantage, which is what, so I don't call them evil for it, that's just what they do.
Well, and in the example of ESG, the reason these institutional investors, these asset management firms get so large is because it's government money they're investing. They're investing actually other people's money, whether it's pension funds, municipal bonds, sovereign wealth funds. They're using government money in order to increase their private firm. And so it's not purely a free market situation by any measure.
Well, I would just say, I agree with you on that. And I do not like it if someone takes my mutual fund money and votes my proxy without my knowledge for some harebrained social agenda, environmental agenda, whatever they're voting for, not for the profit of the company, but for carrying out, using that money and that wealth to advance their agenda. But it's not my agenda. I don't like it.
Right.
And I think congratulate you for pointing that out.
Well, thank you. I want to ask about your motivation to support Donald Trump in 2016. You were one of the first politicians, in fact, I think the first U.S. senator to come out in support of his campaign.
Yeah, I thought I was frustrated with the Republican establishment. I'm going to just tell you. I bumped heads with them for years. They weren't listening. So we had a meeting one time on the economy, and the great senator, and he's so smart, he listed all these things that we were going to do to make the economy better. And I said, there's something missing on it. And he said, what? I said, nowhere in there do you say you want wages to go up for working Americans. That's the core of America. They go to work every day. And we'd like to make sure they're benefiting too, not just GDP So I thought Trump's agenda on growth, on more American energy, protecting us from cheating foreign trading partners that were closing our plants all over the place, that finally somebody had the guts to say, we're not going to let this continue. We'll put a tariff on you if we have to. I thought that we weren't getting sufficient strength within the Republican candidates over immigration. They all talked a little bit about it, but when the chips were down, nobody was really committed. He made a firm commitment to fix the immigration system. Made a lot of progress, which was thrown away within weeks of the Obama-Biden administration. I also thought, 20 years on the Armed Services Committee, that we needed to be more realistic about our foreign policy. I mean, this catastrophe in Ukraine, if you think about it, try to just be objective about it, it's just tragic. It's heartbreaking. That country is in turmoil. Millions have fled the country. Somebody said that 500,000 Russians have been killed and as many Ukrainians. I mean, I really think Donald Trump could have prevented that war from happening. We need to prevent wars. not see how much money we can give to help people get into a proxy fight with both sides supporting them to see how many they're going to get killed. No, this is not good for anybody. I don't think the Lord wants that kind of prolonged war. I really don't. So sometimes you have to fight. I believe in a strong defense. But so I think Trump's instincts were right about those things. And so I thought that our mainstream Republican and Democratic politicians and leaders weren't grasping it.
Well,
Maybe I thought that a bull in the china shop, shake things up was what was needed.
Well, that certainly was a disruption to the system as it had been, and we're seeing a lot of change continuing in our political environment. I'm curious, as we sit here today, we're in July 2024, and the Democratic Party is in disarray. There are calls from some politicians, from many in the legacy media, for President Biden to step down. I'm curious what you think of the current state of the Republican Party and the direction it's headed in.
Well, it does seem to be coalescing behind Trump, and the Never Trump crowd is pretty small.
Seems marginalized at this point.
I think that the Republicans will probably go into this more unified. The main reason all these concerns, I know Trump could be bombastic and it turned a lot of people off, but the economy was humming. He would have clearly been reelected but for COVID. And the media blamed him for everything. And I think he took more blame for the difficulties of COVID than he probably should have. So he got the economy moving. He was making progress on the border. He was interfacing one-on-one with foreign leaders. And he was a wheeler dealer. He understands, which some of us Americans don't. Other nations have interests too. They have things that politically they can't do. They ask us all the time to do A, B, and C, and we say, if we do that, we get voted out of office. Sorry, our people don't want to do that. Well, they have some of those things too. And so you want, for prosperity, you'd like to see a free market operate. You'd like to see trade and invention and low-cost energy, less regulations, less taxes. And so that's what we got, and the economy was booming. So I think that, and we didn't have war. We had less war. The war started after he left office, two of them.
And Afghanistan implosion.
Yes, and Afghanistan was, Trump was determined to end it, but he was listening to the military on how to do so. And I think it appears that Biden just directed them, no matter what, to pull out immediately. And it was impossible to provide the kind of protection that we should have provided to our allies and to our own military. But so I will just say this, Alan. This is a very simple statement. I believe a great nation needs a leader who can talk to foreign leaders one-on-one, understand what they're saying, and make agreements and deals that lead to peace and prosperity for both. Now, I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure he cannot do that, Joe Biden. I just don't think, and the question I have is, who is making the decisions?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are wondering that.
And I don't think heavyweights are making it. Now, I'm not saying they're evil people. I'm just saying I'm not sure they have the gravitas or the if you're behind the scenes, it's not the same as I'm being responsible when I make a commitment to a foreign nation. These things should last for a long time. We want to have, it's so important that this world settle down. And we've got dangers out there. China is a big threat. Russia is now at a point where it's dangerous. They got more nuclear weapons, and more tactical nuclear weapons for sure than the United States does. They're the #1 nuclear arsenal in the world. So, I mean, you need to be able to have a relationship with nations like that. The last thing in the world we want is somehow one of the Ukraines or something erupts into a nuclear confrontation that would be devastating for millions of people. I just think it's we got America should have a leader who can participate positively in that kind of situation.
Well, we're a couple years away from 2026, which is the semi-quincentennial of the Declaration of Independence, the 250th anniversary. And you and I have worked together a lot these last few years on civics education initiatives and teaching of history. And I'm curious about your efforts in this area because you've been very involved with numerous organizations, from the Jack Miller Center to ACTA, to the Intercollegiate Studies Institute. What is driving this passion for education?
I think you share it because we've talked about it. I believe if we do not transmit a rich understanding, an honest understanding of the greatness of the American experience to our next generation, and we're already failing. Knowledge of history is dropping. Anybody denies that's not telling you the truth. And so if this pell-mell collapse in our understanding of America, the greatness of this nation, its positive history throughout the world, and our people no longer love America because they don't know anything about it, then we have deep problems asking for the future. Henry Kissinger one time said to me about, we're standing outside a meeting and the Europeans weren't helping us very much on terrorism or something, and he said, outside of a strong nation state, it's very difficult to ask people to sacrifice. So the European, Brussels, is going to sacrifice for some United States deal or something, or a threat to England. We need to know that first and foremost, the people love this country, and when its wise leaders talk to them and say we have to sacrifice to do A, B, and C to secure our future for the next 30 years, they believe it.
Yeah.
And will pay the price. But I'm worried that our institutions their credibility are being substantially eroded.
Well, I've been in higher education my entire career. I've been in private practice, and I've worked as a government attorney both for the Alabama Supreme Court and the Attorney General's office, but I always had one foot in academia. I was always either teaching as an adjunct instructor or teaching as a teaching assistant or getting a degree. And one thing I've witnessed is an emphasis on training up activists, as if activism itself is a valid subject matter. When you train up young people to be activists, but they don't know what they need to be activists about, you have a problem, because activism in itself is value neutral. You have to be an activist about values. And when students, young people, don't have any foundations yet and they haven't studied history, and it's not necessarily their fault because they either haven't been taught it by teachers or by those who control the curriculum, or they just haven't had an opportunity to study. But I think a lot of young people would embrace a more comprehensive curriculum that taught, for example, Athens, Greece, Jerusalem, and Western civilization and the American founding. This is an exciting curriculum. These are great stories, and I think there's a hunger among young people for those things.
Well, you're closer to it than I. I'm glad to hear you say that. You've articulated the problem beautifully. And will they respond? The great Victor Davis Hanson, he's on TV a lot, and great historian. He says the number of college, university history teachers has plummeted. The number of students majoring in history has plummeted. We know in Alabama, and I know this to be a fact that probably was certainly not anticipated, but we test for math, science, and English in Alabama. The schools have to report publicly how their students did. They do not report on history, for example, and so the better teachers are pushed into those subjects that they have to report publicly. And it's meaning that we have less qualified teachers. I know a great history teacher that for bonus, a pay raise, left teaching history to teach math because the school wanted to get their math scores up. They don't report. So I would say we need to begin to report history too. Yeah. And because if you don't have, America didn't just spring out of nothing.
Right.
Ab initio.
Right.
I mean, it was you got, like you said, Athens, Jerusalem, Rome, and then the British
common law. Yeah.
British common law. We advanced out of that, and none of those countries were perfect either. None of those people were perfect, and no other country in the world was perfect. So we can't blame America and say it's a failed, illegitimate state because it didn't fix every problem then existing in the world when it was founded. That's just stupid, and that's the ignorance of history.
Yeah, I like the phrase that we need to teach in the founding generation in particular, warts and all, but not all warts. Well, Senator Sessions, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for all that you've done for the lives and institutions of our state. I really am grateful personally for that.
Well, it has been an honor for this country more to have represented Alabama in the Senate, to be State Attorney General, to be Attorney General of the United States, and be able to participate in these things. And it's just something that far exceeded any expectations I may have ever had.
Oh, that's beautiful. This has been Success Stories. I'm Alan Mendenhall signing off.